you now Dr. Joshua Freitas.
My goal is not to give you a bunch of statistics or facts, but the way that today will line out is a little bit about dementia, a whole bunch of stuff that you can bring home that you can actually implement from walking out this door. Things that you can change in your house that can reduce falls, improve sleeping patterns, circadian rhythm, and decrease sundowning. So that's my goal, is to feed you a whole bunch of tools that you can start using as soon as you walk out this door. Tell you a little bit about my past. I thought I was going to be a researcher for kids with autism, being a music therapist. I actually had a tough time finding a job, so I got a job working with a lady who had Alzheimer's disease that got kicked out of the symphony. She was a concert pianist, and she was told she couldn't play piano anymore. What happened is I started playing piano for her. She started coming up and telling me how bad I was. So it was a great opportunity for her to teach me, showing that there's still great quality of life, but also throughout that process, we started learning music from around the world she's never known. She started learning new music. So if you walk away with anything today, it's that somebody with dementia can still learn. You always hear that they can't learn, and that's completely false. Perfect example for those of you that have loved ones living in a residential community, for example. If I come in and she's sitting in my seat, guess what happens? Get that woman out of my seat. Does she know who I am? That's a perfect example that I just learned that that is my seat. So people with dementia can still learn. So keep that in the back of your mind. From there, I joined an organization in Massachusetts and New York and got to really work with residents side by side. It was really eye-opening, and I got pushed into Harvard to study healthcare economics to see what's coming our way. And it is a little scary to see the numbers increasing year over year. For example, I work in Florida, and from now to the year 2028, the population just for Alzheimer's is going to increase 38.5%. What we need to do is, while we wait for a cure, is to put better care practices in place. That's for residential setting, that's for home setting. We need to have better care tactics. So that I really appreciate you guys coming out here and learning some of those tactics to bring back and share with other caregivers. I appreciate that. From there, I noticed that that wasn't the place for me, so I dropped out. My parents were a little upset. And I went to Lesley University, where I studied non-pharmacological healthcare. For example, did you know that the smell of fresh cut grass releases oxytocin and can decrease depression? Something as small as that can make a big impact in the quality of life for somebody with dementia. There was a research study in the UK where they had residents grow grass in their room, built a sense of purpose, they watered it, and they cut it. They actually showed those residents had less anxiety and less depression. Something as small as that can make a big impact. So making sure people have a sense of purpose and meaning is really important. From there, I started osteopathic neuroscience. So that's how our bones, muscles, and joints shape our brain. For those of you that have loved ones at home, one challenge you're going to have is showering. A lot of people with dementia hate showering. So give the person with dementia a loofah to hold on to. The reason I say this is when the water comes out, they might get spooked and push away that caregiver, or maybe a little bit aggressive that we think it is, so they might get pushed away. By giving them a loofah to hold on to changes that. It's dignified, they can help wash themselves. In addition is when the water hits them, they're going to squeeze that loofah. The act of squeezing releases melatonin in the brain and relaxes the body. So just like a stress ball. So you're actually changing the neurochemistry, making that person more relaxed, and having a more successful shower. So for those of you that have loved ones at home, just put a loofah in the shower. If you have caregivers there to help, make sure they have that loofah in their hand, and you'll see a better process of giving a shower. That's where it actually brought me into, I wanted to study aging neuroscience. There's a lot of things in our brain that change due to our environment. For example, autonomy. If you allow somebody with dementia more space to learn, it actually fosters more neurogenesis. It gets the brain actually learning. So I hear a lot of things like, oh, they have dementia, they can't go on outings. No, they should go on as many outings as possible because they need to stimulate their brain and stay active. So a lot of research shows that people should have opportunity for continuous exploring. It's really healthy for the brain. So that's what brought me over into California Institute of Integral Studies. And I'm technically not a doctor yet. I'm just finishing my coursework. And then I'm writing my dissertation, which is on how environmental design influences quality of life. So really something as simple as changing color contrast in a community can make a huge impact. And I'm going to share some of that you can bring home with you today. So today I'm going to walk you through, what I'm going to ask is if you take notes, I've asked people what do they typically take notes on. And one is products. So I'm going to mention a number of products that you can put in your house to decrease anxiety. So I would ask that you probably make a list of products that I might refer to. You can keep notes. And then also just care interventions. And then a section for color. I get a lot of questions and emails about color, and we're going to talk a lot about that. I actually changed a lot of my PowerPoint last night because there's a lot of new research I wanted to share with you. One is called the green knob theory, or the green knob project. So that's one thing you'll probably want to take notes on. So just want to give you a heads up on that. So today is truly focusing on the person before the disease. From the moment you first heard me speak to after you heard my story, you actually changed in your brain and your limbic system of what you thought of me. It is key that caregivers know more about the person with dementia before they start providing care. So I always recommend doing a resume for your loved one. Things they love, things they don't love, words that they like, people that they remember, and give that to a caregiver. You're going to actually change the quality of care. Having that background history is really important. So focusing on the person before the disease, I'm going to share one last story and we'll start. I had a resident that was in a care community that I managed at one time. And every day she was curled up in a ball and she was saying, "They're trying to kill me, they're trying to kill me, they're trying to kill me." And all I heard is, "Oh, they have dementia. She has dementia. She has dementia. She has dementia." And it just drove me nuts. After about 6 months, I came in at night to do some in-servicing. And what it was is, and no fault to the caregivers, but they were coming into the room using a flashlight to do room checks. So they would open the door, shine the light in, and then go to the next one. And she took that as somebody breaking in. In that moment, people were focused on the disease before the person. You have to listen and validate to what that person is saying. Sometimes it might not make sense, but it's coming from a place that they're trying to tell you something. So listen, try to get in their reality, and a lot of problems can be solved. As soon as we discontinued that light flashing from room to room, the behavior went away immediately. So really try to listen to what that person is telling you. It might not make full sense to us, but in their reality, it does make sense. So try to listen and try to problem solve. So the first part of today is going to be a little bit boring, so I apologize. We're going to learn a little bit about the disease itself. There's 3 parts of the brain that you should leave with today. If you have a loved one with dementia, you should be familiar with. So here they are, the prefrontal cortex, the amygdala, and the hippocampus. So the prefrontal cortex I bring up because this is personality, this is judgment. If someone you know has something called FTD, or frontal temporal dementia, one of the hallmarks is that they might have no filter. They might say whatever pops in their mind. So they might come across as rude, but it's not. It's whatever pops in their mind. That's because the frontal lobe is actually getting affected. The next 2 pieces are crucial in memory. With most forms of dementia, the hippocampus gets affected. It actually undergoes something called atrophy. It's shrinking. When it shrinks, that means short-term memory gets affected. That means what you had for breakfast, a name, a date, or a specific, they might not internalize or store into long-term memory. The amygdala used to be known as the fear center. It's no longer the fear center, it's a sensory center now. It processes how people make us feel. This is how somebody with dementia primarily processes their memories. For example, a friendly handshake, a smile. That is how somebody's processing. So for example, I'll share what our residents, what they say about me due to their memory. Their hippocampus is a dates, time specific, my position, my name. They don't remember that. What they remember is I'm the man that sings too much or talks too much. And that's because it's processed in the amygdala. They'll say, "Oh, there's that guy that sings all the time." And that's how they process memory. So keep that in the back of your mind. Some other easy ways, and I'll try not to make any loud noises when I walk by, is simple things like giving a handshake. When you give a handshake, somebody's up to 28% more likely to focus on you and recognize this moment because of somatic psychology. They're actually processing this touch and focusing on me. So physical connection is great. I'm not saying go out and touch people. Just go out and give a handshake or touch their shoulder very lightly. It'll allow them to focus in on you. So those are parts of the brain that are really, really important. What the magic is behind this, in most forms of dementia, the amygdala does not get affected. So that means emotional knowledge stays there. So this is when they remember that friendly face. Sometimes you'll see a lot of emotion that goes along with the diagnosis. So keep in mind, the hippocampus typically gets affected, dates, times, and specifics, but there are ways to help people remember things, and it's through sensory-based knowledge. The prefrontal cortex is personality, judgment, sequencing, mathematics. So keep that in the back of your mind. And just some random facts. The hippocampus, if you translate it into Latin, actually means seahorse. It looks just like a seahorse. So I figured it was good for you guys to know. Okay. So also neurotransmitters. This is important to know too. These are chemicals in the brain, and different life experiences release different neurotransmitters. For example, as a music therapist, if you listen to music that you love in the morning while you're driving to work and you're singing along to it in your head, it releases serotonin and dopamine, makes you happy. It also wakes you up. So one way to avoid sundowning in the morning for your loved one, if you see behaviors or agitation, play music that they love. If they sing along to it in their head, they're waking up, and they're actually going to be in a better mood because they have more serotonin and dopamine released in their body. At night, something as simple as playing non-biharmonic music, just a violin, just a cello, not biharmonic, two things at once, releases melatonin and will help with sleep cycles and reduce sundowning in the evening. So simple things like that. Also smells, we'll talk a little bit later today. If you use spearmint or peppermint in the morning, wakes you up, releases serotonin. Lavender or eucalyptus in the evening releases melatonin. And I'll repeat that a little later today. So neurotransmitters are just chemicals in the brain, but they can be released due to our life experiences. So dementia, let me ask you a question. Raise your hand. If you think dementia is a disease, raise your hand. Raise it nice. Don't be shy, really raise it high so I can see. Okay, so dementia is not a disease. It's actually a classification of signs and symptoms. It's actually a syndrome. So dementia, I always get the question, what's the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's disease? Alzheimer's is a condition or a disease that causes dementia symptoms. So dementia is an umbrella term, okay? And to answer that question is, so right here you have the umbrella term of dementia. Underneath you have different conditions that cause dementia. How many different types of dementia do you think there are? That side of the room, don't yell, because I know some of you guys have been through a training I did. How many types? Just yell it out nice and loud. 10, 5, 60? More than 100. There's over 100 conditions that cause dementia. To go a little deeper, some people actually think there's in the 300s different conditions that can cause dementia. How many of you guys have heard of Alzheimer's disease? Raise your hand. Okay. How many of you guys have heard of vascular dementia? Raise your hand. How many of you guys have heard of Lewy body? How many of you guys have heard of frontal temporal? How many of you guys have heard of Creutzfeldt-Jacobs disease? Okay, good. Okay, let me just break this down. I'm going to actually spend just a few minutes on here because I think it's important. Alzheimer's is really characterized by short-term memory loss. Don't remember what you had for breakfast, but I do remember 1940, and I can tell you my first kiss, I can tell you my first car, I can tell you my favorite color. Alzheimer's disease. It's by far the most common, about 75% of all the population. Worldwide, it's misdiagnosed about 3 out of 10 times. It's actually lower than that in the United States. Second is vascular dementia. Second most common type of dementia. I love that you guys talked about preventative, because high blood pressure, really keeping your blood pressure down. Other things like TIAs, transient ischemic attacks, mini strokes, or a large limbic stroke can also cause this. This one is hallmarked by inconsistent symptoms. So this is somebody that you ask them a question, they know your name, they know the date, they know the time. 2 days later, they don't know who you are. Another day or two goes by, they remember who you are and what you're doing. So a hallmark for vascular dementia is that it's inconsistent. One day their memory's great, the next day it's not as great. When we get to dementia with Lewy body, I'll spend a little bit more time here because I think it's a little misunderstood. Is what you start to see is Parkinsonian shakes, but a big hallmark of this is hallucinations. People with Lewy body should not watch television. they should watch television, they should not watch the news. If they see negative news like a car burning or a building burning, that's going to stick to them. They're going to think their mother, their sister, their father was in that burning building.
So with that in mind, with hallucinations, we have to also keep in mind how the environment affects them. One thing is that the color black from the kneecap down for most dementia is scary. For dementia with Lewy body, it's very scary. So we suggest caregivers having tan pants or white shoes, so people aren't resistant to care. Another thing is a black mat. Make sure to move that, because they won't want to walk across it. They'll tiptoe or try to step over it. What's really great about Lewy body is that they have something called a reflective gene or a mirror neuron. This means that they mimic what they see. So if there's a housekeeper over there dusting, you might see somebody with dementia, with Lewy body, is actually mimicking what they see. Use it to your advantage. For example, one of my pet peeves is in communities, what happens is I have Parkinsonian shakes with Lewy body. So what happens is you put me at a table where they have feeders, and I hate that term, where everybody else is having assistance. Guess what? I see everybody struggling, so I start to struggle. The best thing to do is put them at a table where people are very independent and eating. If they actually see all those people eating, what happens is they mimic it, and they'll bypass that shake, and they'll just start to eat. This is kinesthetic muscle memory. So putting them in that place. Also, if you have a loved one at home or you care for somebody with Lewy body, keep in mind that they do get a shuffle gait, so you'll start to see them walk a little bit forward. Best thing to do is to sing with them. If you give a melody that has a beat to it, like, off we go into the wild blue yonder, climbing high into the sun, and you get them to march, it will bypass that, and you'll start to see people walk a little bit better. So if you're walking down the hall, sing with them. Another thing is do care in a corner. So what this means is you leave a corner open. I don't want to be able to see me, so I apologize. Is for Lewy body in a residential care setting, is in the corner, leave one corner open. The great thing about this is, because of dementia with Lewy body, you'll see people get changed, and you'll help them, and they'll fall forward. However, if you have a corner, they can lean in that corner, they can help get their pants on, they can help get their shirt on, and they can be very successful. So try to do a care corner for them. So dementia with Lewy body, hallucinations is the big thing. Try not to watch the news as much, but also leverage the reflective gene or mirror neuron. They'll mimic what they see. There's also some products here I always mention that they're really expensive, but I still mention them. With the Parkinsonian shake, they actually have a spoon now that has a gyroscope that will stabilize the hand, and they can go ahead and just eat. But the spoon's about $3,500. And then they also have these gloves that you can put on. I saw a man who's struggling putting together PVC piping. Put the gloves on, put that piping ring together. $5,000 a glove. However, that came out about 3 years ago. So that price will start to come down as more and more research goes behind it. So those things will eventually be out there. There are alternatives. So under that product section, they have a spoon. It's called the Parkinsonian spoon. And it allows the hand to shake. And the spoon stays completely stable. So they go ahead and eat soup. It's only $99. So that's one product that you could implement pretty easily. Okay, frontal temporal dementia we talked a little bit about. The frontal lobe gets affected. So this means that personality traits get changed. Also that they have no filter. They're going to say whatever pops in their mind. If you work or have a loved one with frontal temporal dementia, just take a little card on the back and say, please be patient, I'm with somebody with dementia. When you're out in public, if they say something inappropriate, show that card. What's also really fascinating about frontal temporal dementia is the gait gets shuffled differently too. It's not like Lewy body where you're starting to fall forward. You start to see these little walks. And you'll see them get into a corner and they don't know what to do next. With frontal temporal dementia, they need to know what's coming next. So for example, even on their bedroom door, put 2 arrows. This way to the kitchen, this way to the living room. Typically that will prompt them to know what to do next, and they'll come out and they'll actually go where they need to go. So they really need cues and routine. These are the people in a residential setting that I see the most. Get that woman out of my seat. Does she know who I am? Because routine is really important with most dementia, but it's actually elevated for frontal temporal dementia. I'm going to share a little bit of research just because I have a little time. In Japan, they had this research project with 32 people with FTD, and they couldn't get them to come out of their rooms. They wouldn't participate. What they did is they painted all the doors different colors. Red, blue, black. What they noticed is the color red was fascinating for people with FTD. Couldn't fully figure it out. But it improved socialization by 65%. So what they did is they painted all their doors red, and it actually encouraged the residents to come out of their rooms. The problem was is that the outsides were red and the insides, so it encouraged them to come out of their rooms and then go into other people's rooms, and then come out of their rooms and go into other people's rooms. So what they did is they painted the outer parts white, the inner parts red, and then the magic started happening. People started socializing, building friendships and meaning and purpose, because they saw the red door and it created curiosity. What's on the other side of that red door? They would come out and start participating. Then the problem was is that they wouldn't stay sleeping, because they would wake up and be like, oh, that red door, I'm gonna come out in the middle of the night. So they put a mini blind on the inside of their door. So for 32 residents, they could improve the engagement and socialization up to 65% just by changing the color of the door, which is pretty fascinating. Right. So that's kind of those in a nutshell. You can go much deeper, but that's just a little bit. Okay, true or false, before I go to this, is there such thing as reversible dementia? Or curable dementia? Yes, I've heard a lot of people say yes. So the answer is yes. So the non-reversible ones that are degenerative is Alzheimer's, vascular dementia, Lewy body, frontotemporal, and PICS. I didn't talk about PICS. It's another form of frontotemporal dementia. So everything I said for FTD is also for PICS. Typically it's a little faster progressing. Some reversible, so delirium, medication side effects. For those of you caregivers out there, keep an eye on medications. For example, there's something you should probably write a note of. It's called MCE, medicine cascade effect. What this is you prescribe one medicine, and then you have all these side effects, and then you prescribe a whole bunch of other medicines for the symptoms. Before you know it, somebody's on 10, 15 pills just for the symptoms of that original medication. For example, some of the medicines for Alzheimer's in particular are inflammatory drugs, so it makes your enteric nervous system get large, making people feel maybe constipated, a little uncomfortable, irritable bowel syndrome. So you prescribe these other medicines. Before you know it, somebody's on 10, 15 medications. I'll share, I've had somebody close to 40 medications, where they start to reduce them. Not all of them are for the side effects, but the person started coming back to life when they started removing some of the medications. There's a lot of research on non-pharmacological dementia care that's really impactful. For example, there's a research study done for one of the big ones. Out there, I can't say exactly what it is legally, but they had a group on the medicine, a group that just had a fantastic family and support group, and everyone got education, and then a group that was on the medication and had a great support system. These two groups actually elevated quality of life. People improved and sustained for longer periods of time than just the people put on the medicine alone. I'm not saying that medicine doesn't have a place, it definitely does. The way it works is that it boosts acetylcholine in the brain, helps with cognition. So it's great. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So what I always say is that it can't be all pharmaceutical, it can be all non-pharmacological. They need to meet each other in the middle and what's right for that person. So just work with your doctor and ask a lot of questions. Your doctor is a care provider, and it's always good to ask questions. Why are we doing this? What are some of the symptoms? What are things to look out for? Just ask questions. So, medicine cascade effect. Depression, clinical depression elevates your risk for developing Alzheimer's disease later on in life. However, in some cases, some people with clinical depression will exhibit like they have Alzheimer's disease, but they don't have Alzheimer's disease. But memory, executive functioning, those things get a little bit more challenged. Vitamin B12 deficiency, chronic alcoholism, tumors, infections, anything in your stomach that gets affected also can affect your brain. So there's something called the vagus nerve that connects kind of your enteric nervous system to your brain. And if your kidneys get affected or your stomach is affected, it can cause some cognitive challenges. I'm going to just backtrack just a little bit. How many brains do you have? So a lot of research from the mid-90s actually shows that you technically have 3 brains. You have your endocrine nervous system, which is your secondary brain, your neurocortex, and then your cardiovascular system. So any of those things that get affected can cause dementia. The reason that they're classified as a secondary brain, for example, is that there's actually neurons. So if you've ever been in love before and you get those tingles, it's just neurons firing off your stomach. It's not the butterflies. But it's really important for us to know anything that affects our gut can also affect our brain. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Before I move on, I'm just going to quiz you. How many brains do we have? 3. Good. Okay, so before I move on, what type of dementia, and hold on until I say, what's the answer you can give me? Short-term memory is affected. They might not remember what they had for breakfast, but they can remember 1940, 1930. What type of dementia is this? How many different forms or conditions can cause dementia? Over 100. How many? How long does it take somebody with dementia to learn something new? On average. We didn't cover this. 35 days. On average, it shows that it takes you and I 21 days to learn something new. In most cases with dementia, it takes about 35 days. This means a new environment somebody moves into, to learn that that is my seat, to learn that you are my caregiver. It's going to take about 35 days. Keep that in the back of your mind. So true or false, can somebody with dementia still learn? Yes. And how long does it take? 35 days. Okay, how long? 35 days. Okay. Okay, so normal aging versus dementia. I always get the question, well, isn't dementia part of aging? And no, it's not. It used to actually be in gerontology, which is the study of aging, that dementia was considered part of normal aging. It's not anymore. It's okay to be forgetful. It's okay to forget where you put your car keys. How many of you guys forget your car keys in the morning? Okay, same thing. That's normal aging. Where dementia, some red flags start to get flagged is when you put the remote in the microwave. When you put keys in the trash. When you hop on to, I moved to Florida, so my directions are out here, 24 to say in Massachusetts, I don't know, that's only rude, I know. And you end up at one end of it, and you were actually aiming for the other. When you get in a car and drive for 2-3 hours and get out and have no idea where you are, that's a big red flag. So those are the things to consider. It's not always dementia, it could be depression. It can also just be age. So keep that in the back of your mind. True or false, can somebody with dementia still learn? Yes. Okay, how long does it take them? 35 days. See, very nice. Okay, so this is the process. It's called the carrot principle in psychology of how you learn something new. So you remind the person to do it, you routinely do it, and then the reward is that they can do it themselves. So I see this all the time in our communities where I work. I get families say, oh, they can't brush their teeth, they can't shower, they can't do this. In most cases, we see residents actually picking those skills back up. It's reminding them to do it, so cueing and reminding, routinely doing it for about that 35-day period, and the reward is they start to do it themselves. It's amazing how many caregivers come up to me after and they say, I've been doing this with Mrs. Smith and now she's brushing her own teeth. It's amazing to see them re-pick up skills. They just need to be stimulated and challenged to do it. Here in America, what happens is we typically jump in and do it for them. We see them struggling to make a bed, we jump in and do it for them. It's not the best thing to do. It's actually to step away, let them do what they can, and help assist as little as possible, to help them remain as independent as possible. How many of you guys have heard of the Dementia Village? Raise your hand. Okay, for the rest of you that didn't raise your hand, go home and YouTube and type the Dementia Village. This is a village where they actually train everybody to work with dementia. People live independently, they have their own shopping markets, their own grocery stores, their own post office, where everybody's encouraged to live as independent as possible. People there, in some research studies, say that they decline symptoms up to 3 years by living more independent. It's pretty fascinating, keeping people as independent as possible. So this is the carrot principle of how I can introduce that into your own home. Medication. So true or false, medication slow down the disease itself? False. So medications do not slow down the disease itself, it masks symptoms. So how that works is, for you and I, to give you an analogy, if you were sick with the flu and you had the runny nose, you take an antihistamine, get rid of the runny nose, it dries you up, and you still have the flu. So the medications right now, they boost acetylcholine, they can actually help minimize dementia symptoms, but the disease itself is still progressive. However, there's a lot of organizations that are putting a lot of money into research, and the future does look hopeful. We just need to keep supporting those organizations to try to find a cure or preventatives. But right now, there's no medications that actually slow down the disease process. This is the last thing, and then we'll actually get to the fun stuff. This is all the boring stuff, so I apologize. Is telomeres. There's a lot of research. Who here has ever heard of a telomere before? Raise your hand nice and high. For the rest of you that haven't, go home and YouTube telomeres and aging. It is amazing research that's going on that shows when you actually stay engaged in life, that your telomeres actually shorten at a slower speed. So people that stay more engaged in life, their biological clock slows down and they age slower. It's fascinating. Some research is actually starting to indicate people with dementia, when they start to get rejuvenated or reintroduced or stimulated, that their telomeres start to lengthen again and slow down their own aging process. In many cases, they show that it's a non-pharmacological intervention, stimulating people every day in normalcy to slow down the symptoms organically. So really getting people to, as much as possible, do the things they did every single day and stimulate and be a non-pharmacological trigger to slow down disease symptoms organically. And I see it all the time. Perfect. Now we can actually start to get to the more fun stuff. So person-centered care, if you haven't heard of this before, the person that I see pop up the most when I do research is Tom Kitwood. I don't know if you've heard of them. Anyone in this room ever heard of Tom Kitwood? Raise your hand. Okay, so Tom Kitwood has written many books on dementia, many research studies. And it's really fascinating to see the person-centered approach and how it improves quality of life, treating people as people before a disease. I'm going to give you probably one of the best tools you can walk away with today. How many of you guys use Google? Raise your hand. How many of you guys use Google Scholar? Raise your hand. Okay, so for the rest of you that didn't raise your hand for Google Scholar, next time you do research on Alzheimer's disease, caregiving, whatever it might be, go to Google Scholar first. Google Scholar works just like Google. You type in anything you want to know, and it's all peer-reviewed research that pops up, care interventions, reviewed books. It's a really great tool, so it's Google Scholar. And Tom Kitwood's stuff's all up there, mostly for free, so you don't have to go there and buy a bunch of stuff. He has some fantastic books out there too as well. So this is the habilitation or retrogenesis are two big terms that make me sound a little bit smarter than I am. But habilitation, if you haven't heard of it, is the study of the focus on what people can still do. So for example, when I train in our communities, I say, if I'm doing a cooking group, and you guys are my group, you might be able to mix, you might be able to read from the cooking book, you might be able to pass me the recipes, you might be able to just listen, but I'm going to include you in that conversation. It's called habilitation. So habilitation is the focus of what people can still do, and that's what we need to focus on. Another term is retrogenesis. And this is just a big fancy term that means we develop things in life. When we develop dementia, we lose those things in mirror order opposite. For example, the first developed skill we develop as being humans, the ability to grab and squeeze. The last thing we lose, somebody on hospice, palliative care, last hours of their life, the ability to grab and squeeze. This is probably the stuff that's more interesting as my next comment. Language. Somebody speaks English, French, and Spanish. Dementia settles in. They're going to lose Spanish, they're going to lose French, and they're going to go back to English. Most people with dementia revert back to their native tongue. For children, for example, you have your first child, your second child, and your third child. In most cases, they forget their third child and second child, and they revert back to their first child. Also keep in mind, I'm trying to think of how deep I want to go into this. Just for time, I'm not going to, but think of things that make the children comfortable, okay? A lot of those things return back when you're a senior, but you have to make it as dignified as possible. For example, children holding hands on a field trip is very comforting. You'll see two people with dementia, they'll start to hold hands for comfort. Or a teddy bear, for example. A child will hold a teddy bear. We don't want to have our loved ones just holding teddy bears, but maybe it's a baby or an object that they love. For many females, it's a purse, something that they can hold on to. Many of those things return. There's a cognitive test I really like. It's called the Allen Cog. If you get a chance to have your loved one or someone you work with go through it. What I love is it actually puts you into a cognitive ability of ranges of children. So say your cognitive ability is at a 7-year-old, cognitive ability at a 5-year-old, and then it says, these are all the things you can do that are dignified based on that age. So a 7-year-old balancing a checkbook, they probably can't balance a checkbook, but they can write a check. So giving some fake checks to your loved one that they feel like you're paying their bills. So it's a really great tool. Okay. Putting the person first. Putting yourself into their shoes. So I know today they have a dementia simulation, which I would suggest everybody to go through. It's a really great opportunity to learn what somebody with dementia is going through. I'm just going to give you a few things out of this. The first thing is, as we age, we start to develop cone vision. So what I want you to do is all do this owl eye on both eyes. So as you age, you start to actually see this. You lose peripheral vision and you lose direct vision. This is important to know, because when you approach somebody with dementia, you want to approach from the front, not the side. What I see a lot of is, oh, there's mom, and then we walk in and we jump into her line of vision. She gets spooked and she pushes you away. So making sure that you keep that in mind. So I'm not going to talk too much on this because I'm already running behind. But if you get a chance to go through the dementia simulation, it's a really great opportunity for you to experience what it's like to have dementia for about 10 minutes. I want you guys all to take a second and read this. Go ahead. How many of you guys could read that pretty easily? I'm not going to lie, this slide was really hard to do. Because every time I typed it, I kept trying to fix it. So keep this in mind. This was very easy for you to remember because the first and last letters stayed the same. Linking this to somebody with dementia, when you communicate with them, keep in mind, they typically remember the first word you speak to them and the last word you speak to them. It's the basic subconscious. So when you ask somebody, do you need to use the restroom? Don't say, do you need to use the restroom? Isn't today a beautiful day? They've already forgotten about the restroom. So make sure to use key words, and then also keep in mind that as they go further on their journey, it might be one-word sentences. Do you need to use bed? Are you sleeping? Really simple. But keep in mind that remember the first word and the last word that we speak to them. These are 7 easy steps, and I can email to anyone if you want them. So number 1 is to always introduce yourself to the person by prompting information. Think about this. When you come in to visit your mom, your sister, your brother, whoever it might be, I sit there, they're looking back and they're saying, they don't remember my name. Is this my son? Is this my husband? Give them the information right up front. Hey mom, it's just me, your son Josh here again for a visit. Keyword again, so they don't get mad at me for not visiting. But then also using the word Josh. I'm Josh, I'm not Ricky. We'll actually pull from some of that long-term memory and make it more of a successful visit. So always introduce yourself. Number 2, when you're communicating, get down at eye level. Something I always see, I see this a lot in care communities, is we say, Mrs. Smith, can you eat your potatoes? But because it's so close and her peripheral vision is cut off, it's cutting off my head. So she can't actually see who's asking her to eat her potatoes. Making sure to get down at eye level as much as possible. An interesting fact too, when you make eye contact with somebody, your body releases serotonin. It actually gives you a little boost of energy. So that's really fascinating to know. Give a compliment and provide the person, ask the person to participate. So much I see this, come on Mrs. Smith, time to go to the shower, come on. So saying, Mrs. Smith, you look absolutely beautiful today. I'm going to be your caregiver and I'm going to help you in the shower, okay? Give a compliment, it releases oxytocin, and they're more likely to do what you ask. Also keep in mind that the average length of attention span is about 15 minutes for somebody with dementia. And if they're agitated, they say, no, I'm not going with you. Or you walk in their room to wake them up and they say, get out of my room. Come back 15 minutes, and because of the default mode network in the brain, they'll actually be in a different state of mind if you come back after 15 minutes. So if you don't get the response you want, wait 15 minutes and reapproach. Offer choice as much as possible. Don't overstimulate. I see this a lot. We give a whole menu to somebody with dementia at a restaurant. It's too much for them to go through. Just limit the options to just 2 or 3 options. Provide this person with something to hold and manipulate. I see this a lot. We look for the comfort items for every resident who moves into our communities, and it's been really beneficial. I'll share a small story. We have a resident that every once in a while needs to go to the hospital, but won't go. And we didn't realize why. After the team worked with him for a period of time, it was really fascinating. All he needed was a roll of toilet paper in his hand. I know it's really weird, but that was a comfort item for him. Anytime he got agitated, he'd have a roll of toilet paper. He would just pick it or rip it apart. Every time he had to go on an ambulance, he would always say no. As soon as he had that roll of toilet paper, it became a trigger. He would just get right onto that ambulance. So try to look for those comfort items for your loved one or the person you care for. It's going to make your job easier. It could be a photo, it could be a pocketbook, it could be a favorite shirt. So just keep that in mind as much as possible. Number 6 and 7. Number 6, when doing a big group, you should always sit in a circular position so everybody's a front row learner. But the important thing for me to share with you is you always want to be on their dominant side. People with dementia are more receptive to communication and care if you're on their dominant side. So if they're right-handed, you want to be on the right side. If they're left-handed, you want to be on the left side. But keep in mind, just because of the hand they write with, isn't always their dominant side. I'm trying to look for someone I can push safely. Will you come up? One way that you can also find out what side is someone's dominant side is you face that way. Just a little show it. Are you left-handed? Okay. So she would probably be ambidextrous or her brain's different, but typically it's whatever foot you step out with first is your dominant side. So for your loved one at home, whatever foot they step out with first is typically their dominant side thinking. Keep in mind, somebody with dementia will also wander in the direction of their dominant side. So if they wander out that front door, guess what way they're going to go? In the direction of the dominant hand. So keep that in mind. The last thing is also thank the person and create a clear ending. Thank you so much, Mrs. Smith. I had a great day with you. Thank you, Mom. I really appreciate your help with that. It signifies that this is the end of something and something else is happening. Okay, so what you see here is really beautiful, right? For somebody with dementia, it's a nightmare. So you think of this rug, someone's going to be bending over trying to pick things up off of this rug continuously. The glass table, it's a hazard. They might not be able to see where objects are. There's also no armrest on the chair to be able to get up. So keeping that in mind. One thing that I do like is the pillow on the back. People with dementia, if you have the same color chair and they can't see where the indent is, they'll sit on the very edge of it, or they'll sit completely reclined back. But if they can see the difference in the back and the bottom, they'll sit all the way to the back and sit down pretty easily. So making sure that they can see where to sit. The living space is personalize it as much as possible. So making sure that people have things that are comfortable to them and that is familiar. I have to also say, I worked with a lady recently that over time she started to have all these family pictures that made her anxious. She didn't like them. Just remove them. If you see something bothering somebody, just put them away somewhere. It's pretty easy. Okay, so this is the good stuff. The philosophy of color we talked a little bit about. Before we move on, what is the biggest cause of dementia? What is the most common type of dementia out there? What is it? How long does it take somebody with dementia to break a habit or learn something new? Good. What dementia can be hallmarked by hallucinations? They probably shouldn't be watching the news as much. They also have a reflective gene or mirror neuron, so they'll mimic what they see. What dementia is scared of the color black from the kneecap down, and caregivers should actually have lighter shoes and tan pants. Good. Excellent. Okay, so the philosophy of color. I'm going to share some new research that I added in last night that I'm actually doing with 2 organizations, and we're having some really great stuff. One thing to point out is the color lime green. Lime green becomes one of the most prevalent colors we see as we age. The reason is your eyes process 3 colors: blue, green, and red. You get a yellow film over your eyes, changing those colors to lime green, green, and a pinkish color. So, as we age, we actually see lime green become more prevalent. So a caregiver wearing a green uniform is really great because they can identify who to go to over time. Think about it, I need to go to the bathroom, and I see this pool of people out here, who am I going to ask? If somebody has lime green and I've been conditioned to know that's the person to go to, it's going to be more prevalent for them. Some ways lime green can enter into your house really easily. One is a lime green colored toilet seat. It can reduce falls at night because white on white is a really difficult color to see, so it can cause a hit if you miss the toilet. But even the flusher on the toilet, painting it lime green so they can see it. Lime green duct tape works really well on porch steps because they can see that color and they can see where to put their feet. So that's another thing, just have lime green duct tape on hand. Also, lime green improves reading ability for people with dementia. Where this research was done, they had blue, black, gray, pink font. They noticed lime green improved reading ability up to 38%. So what they did is, for people in early stages of dementia, it should be Arial font, anywhere from 18 to 20 size font. For somebody in mid to later stages, it should be 20 to 24 size Arial font in lime green, so you can improve that reading. White is the hardest color to see. So we talked a little bit about the contrast toilet seat. The reason I like contrast toilet seats a lot is because they can see if they're closed or if they're opening, but also where they're going in the bathroom and where they're sitting. It makes them more successful in the bathroom. Another thing is mini blinds. As we age, color contrast becomes more difficult. So white mini blinds on a blue sky isn't enough contrast to allow the eye to focus to see what's on the other side. 5 minutes to the end yet? Question? Okay, cool. So allowing the eye to focus to see what's on the other side is really important. That's why I always say brown mini blinds in houses work really well, or just pull up the mini blinds. Some other things here is toast. I've seen many people, this is observational, not grounded research. I've seen a lot of residents just take a piece of toast off the table and start using it as a napkin. But making sure to put it on a plate orients this is something to eat. This is something as simple as that. Also bureaus. If you have a wood bureau with wood knobs, it's hard for them to see, to open. So change some of the color knobs to a different color so they can see what they're grabbing onto. Also the blankets. If you have white sheets, white pillows, white blankets, they can't see the contrast. So what happens is they lay on top of everything. So try to get like 3 sheet colors and swap out the sheet colors so you have a different color pillow, different color sheets, so that they know where they're getting into. Okay, color in dining is really fascinating. So if you have somebody not eating enough, the 2 best colors up here that's grounded in research is yellow and red. Yellow and red actually is your salvation gland, but also provides color contrast with food and will get people to eat more. Dark blue actually suppresses appetite. So if you have somebody overeating or eating too much, putting on a dark blue plate will suppress that appetite for them. And this one works like clockwork for people with dementia. Lime green, there's minimal research on, but it actually shows because it's the more prevalent color that it can hold the focus and provide some color contrast. Speaking about food, is sometimes people will stop eating as much. Keep in mind, sweet and tart are the last flavors we lose the ability to see. So if you want to test this out for yourself, eat a blueberry and pinch your nose. You can't taste the blueberry. But if you have a salted peanut, you eat a salted peanut, you can still taste it. So for people with dementia, sometimes it's swapping the meal. Start with the dessert first and end with the appetizer. Will actually trigger that behavior to start eating and get them all the way through. Or even Crystal Light. I'm telling you, seniors are not having enough water. They should have 64 fluid ounces of water every day. You and I aren't even getting that. Double up on Crystal Light. You think you and I would taste that? It's really sweet. For a senior, oftentimes, it's just right. They'll drink the whole thing and really get the fluids inside of them as much as possible. This is something fascinating. Originally, the Simmons Project. What they did is put different colored balls on a table. They asked residents to grab 1 ball at a time. 90% of the residents grabbed the color purple first and put it in a basket, showing that they have hoarding tendencies to the color purple. They put out purple napkins, purple pillowcases, purple everything, went missing within 24 to 48 hours. So it showed that people with dementia will actually hoard the color purple more than any other color. What color will go missing more than any other color in memory care? What color is the most prevalent color as we age that we see the most of? What's the hardest color to see? Good. On the other side is that the 90% of the, well not 90, it was like 65% of the residents grabbed the color black last and put it in a basket, showing that they paid the least amount of attention to the color black. So what they did is spatial research from the kneecap down and the kneecap up. They noticed most things that are black in the house from the kneecap down are perceived as scary. A black mat, black trash barrel, black books, whatever it might be, black paneling. However, they noticed from the kneecap up, they were not perceived as scary. So what they did is, for residents that continuously lay in bed, there was a research project done where people had depression. They were going to put on an antidepressant because they wouldn't get out of bed. What they decided to do is actually try black sheets. So 10 of those residents were going to be put on antidepressants. They put on black sheets. 8 out of those 10 residents didn't go back to the bed. They scratched their head and said, black sheets, that's weird. But they didn't go back to the bed, came out and started creating social relationships with other residents, and didn't go back to the bed, and didn't end up having to go on an antidepressant because they created that relationship. After 6 months, they went back to white sheets, which is normal, and kept 7 out of those 10 residents out of bed for another 6 months. So a whole year, 70% of them were successful. So it just showed just changing the sheet color on their bed actually was a non-pharmacological treatment within itself. This is something that's brand new. We just started collecting our data as part of the Glenberg study. And a lot of times people will lock things up with people with dementia and they get frustrated. They lock up all their cabinets, right? So what the Green Knob project was, we took 3 green knobs and gave them to caregivers at home. They locked up all their cabinets besides the cabinets that had the green knobs on it. After about 30 to 40 days, residents identified those are my cabinets, nobody else's. And they would put food in there, they would put things that were safe for them. And the residents actually learned that those knobs were the cabinets I could go to, that they were mine. Actually gave ownership and gave them autonomy to go into cabinets. So the Green Knob project was really great. They put snacks in there, they put first aid stuff, and it worked really well. So it's called the Green Knob project, where residents are learning those are my cabinets. Something else that's really fascinating is there's a circadian rhythm study. You tap into your 5 senses. So for example, we're going to talk about sundowning in a minute. But sundowning can be minimized if you put pajamas on 2 hours before the sun goes down as caregivers. So if your loved one at home has dementia and has sundowning, you put pajamas on 2 hours before the sun goes down. It's a visual trigger saying it's time to start getting ready for bed. And it actually makes them more sleepy. It actually fosters circadian rhythm, which is our internal feeling for sleep. Some other things is blue lighting. So under that product list I told you to keep is the Sleep Aid night lights. Probably the best thing you can get on Amazon. They're only $19 for 2. Most people in the middle of the night have to go to the bathroom with dementia. LED lighting has a blue-green tint, wakes you up. So they don't want to go back to bed, so they might stay up all night. Amberescent lighting, such as a yellow-red tint, keeps you sleepy. So, for example, in our communities, we actually have a red light that shines in the bathroom, illuminates the bathroom, where we have residents that go to the bathroom but aren't woken up and they go right back to bed. They're not woken up. Some other things too is even food can be confusing. So as part of the study, they did breakfast at night, and they measured how many residents were confused if it was nighttime or daytime, and they noticed that just from having eggs and bacon at night confused residents, because it's something that's normal in the morning. When you're building a routine, think about the foods that you give. Are you eating cereal for dinner? It might be confusing. And then also smells. There's 3 smells you should write down. One is spearmint or peppermint, which you should use in the morning to actually get people to wake up. In the afternoon, you should use the smell of pine. Pine releases a neurotransmitter called glutamate. It helps with learning and memory. It can give you a little bit of a cognitive facelift throughout the day. And then at night, you should use lavender or eucalyptus. That actually releases melatonin and helps sleep cycles. If you can use that in your home, you'll see a reduction in sundowning as well in most cases. This is a wandering and lighting study. For those of you living at home to reduce wandering, some things you can do is actually minimize the amount of lights in rooms with exit doors. People with dementia start to actually not like dark spaces. So illuminate things like the bathroom and the kitchen at night will pull their attention to those rooms, not the rooms that they're going to exit. So either dimming those lights or shutting those lights off will minimize the chance for them to just want to wander out. Something else that's part of the study that wasn't supposed to be is it studied knobs on doors. Research shows that you can reduce the amount of wandering or eloping if you put circular knobs on exit doors, because it's harder for them to open because of arthritis and dexterity. Put lever knobs on all the other doors in the internal sides of the house because it's comfortable. Lever knobs are very easy just to open up for a senior, but the circular knobs are more difficult. Okay, wandering triggers. All right, 2 minutes, I'm gonna jump on. I'm just gonna mention one thing in here because I think it's important. The word goodbye for somebody with dementia is not the best thing. It does trigger wandering. Some research shows in care settings, when all the change of shift comes in and everyone says goodbye, what happens when you say goodbye to somebody with dementia, they don't remember you saying goodbye, they know something's missing, so they go looking for it. So using the term like see you soon or see you later or I'll see you tomorrow gives closure and they're not going to go looking for it. Saying goodbye leaves them with a void and they want to go looking for it. Right. Sundowning is something that is pretty prevalent. I gave you the pajama theory, but then also lights. And the last thing I'm going to give you is music. So if you listen to music that is well known in your ear, wakes you up, you're going to bypass sundowning in the morning. In the evening, you're going to use music that's non-biharmonic. Just the violin, just a cello. Yo-Yo Ma works the best. That simple thing that sounds almost like a lullaby releases melatonin and keeps you sleepy. So you're going to foster a better sleep cycle that way as well. We mentioned the pajamas and then also the lights. I see people that do that at home minimize sundowning quite drastically. So keeping that in mind as much as possible.